Dr. S.K. Deshpande, sir, don't need any formal introduction, but still, as a part of a webinar, I would say that we have a renowned cardiac anesthetist from Nagpur, a very good guide, teacher, a very good orator, and a very senior member of ISA Nagpur. I welcome you, sir, and hand over the mic to you for our today's topic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ISA NCB, Saurabh, Deepak, and whole team for conducting so many activities in this COVID era. And I really congratulate you for your enthusiasm. Because of this activity, most of the people could gain knowledge in this very boring time. In fact, I started liking this webinar because everybody is comfortable at their home and they can concentrate on the things without the worry of traveling here and there. So, my topic is LV diastolic dysfunction and anesthesia. So, every day, whenever we are anestheting the patient, especially the adults, echo has become a part of their regular preoperative investigation. And we see so many things into the echo. Most of the things are, if you see a typical echo in a patient for a preoperative period, is hypertensive heart disease, mild concentric hypertrophy, no regional wall motion abnormalities, good systolic function with EF of 60%, and type 1 diastolic dysfunction, normal right ventricle and normal IVC. These are the, and then there are certain values which are written over here when nobody pays any attention to that. And we don't know how much risk the patient is carrying for the anesthesia. But when this sentence of BS2, we were used to only concentrating on the ejection fraction all these days. But nowadays, this has become a very important sentence of almost 70 to 80 echoes about the diastolic dysfunction. What is the diastolic dysfunction? There are also on the back of the echo, we can see so many values are written about the normal value of the each chamber, and we have to also know about it. So today's topic I had divided into 4 areas. What is the physiology of left ventricular diastole? What is the LV diastolic dysfunction? What is the echo-derived data for confirmation of grades, which I will be taking slightly on a less time, and patient which is posted with LVDD for anesthesia. As we know, our left ventricle is a very complex structure with so many types of muscles. There are circular muscle, then there are twisting muscle, longitudinal muscles. So they all squeeze the blood to produce a good systole and good output into the aorta. Whereas a diastole causes the good filling of the left ventricle. Now, as we know, the left ventricular muscle has got two elements. One is the left ventricular muscle relaxation, and there is the viscoelastic property of the left ventricle. So normal diastolic function allows adequate filling of the ventricle. So once the ventricles are filled, the pressure at rest or even with stress, that is the stress of exercise, the patient doesn't pressure into the left ventricular end of diastole doesn't rise much. And what happens during the diastole? The left atrium and left ventricular gradient pushes the blood into the left ventricle, but at the same time, left ventricle is so actively relaxing, there is a LV suction effect is there due to the relaxation. This is called as active phase of diastole. Then remaining portion is the passive diastole, which is the viscoelastic tissue which is present into the LV musculature, and this causes the passive diastole. And finally, atrial contraction completes the emptying of the atria and filling of the left ventricle. What are the factors? The factors, most important factor is the gradient between the left atrium and left ventricle. Then left ventricle suction effect and the stiffness of the left ventricle to allow for it for its filling. And the factors above the ventricles are what is the preload, that is the volume into the left atrium, and what is the contractile function of the left atrium. As everybody knows, diastole has got 4 components. First is the isovolumic relaxation, when the aortic wall starts closed, aortic wall is closed, and the ventricles is actively relaxing. There is no change in the volume, but the pressure, intracardiac pressure drops rapidly. Then there is a, once the mitral valve opens, when the gradient is, when the pressure gradient is reached, so there's a sudden opening of the mitral and tricuspid valve, and there's early rapid filling phase causing the E wave. So ventricles are maximally refilled almost by 75 to 80% due to this phase. Then the pressure between the atrium and ventricle almost equal. That is called a diastasis. So it gives a effect like a stasis of blood between the atrium and ventricle. Diastasis, very minimal amount of blood, and this depends upon the compliance or the left ventricular stiffness, and it also depends upon what is the left ventricular mass, what is the myocardial stiffness, what is the outside ventricle, there is the pericardium, what is the pericardial stretching, and right ventricle also plays a role when there is right ventricular hypertension. The ventricular interdependence, the septum gets shifted to the left ventricle. And then last is the atrial systole, which is responsible for almost 25% of the filling of the left ventricle. That's why this atrial kick is very, very important for a proper filling of the ventricle, so that the ventricle can throw out the next stroke volume to produce a good cardiac output. So as we know from ECG, at the end of the T wave, the diastole starts up to the R, then the systole starts. So there are four components: isomolecular recession, then rapid LV filling, diastasis, and the A wave. Now, same thing is described here. Blue is the systole, and this is the diastole. This is the isovolumic relaxation phase, then the early rapid filling phase. And you look at the left ventricular graph, the ventricular rapid filling now, diastasis, and atrial makes the final filling to produce the E wave. E wave and A wave, which is seen on a echocardiography by the transmitral Doppler, which gives one E wave, and this is the A wave. So, is the left ventricular diastole just a passive process like a rubber band when you stretch it during systole and then release it, go back to normal? No. Frank Starling and other and Katz have actually anticipated this beforehand, and they showed that ventricle actually acts like a suction pump after mitral valve opening in the mammalian heart. However, for many years, LV systole was considered as active energy dependent, which is well known, but diastole was always ignored and considered as a passive relaxation phase. So inotropy is a systolic function and lusitropy is a diastolic function. So diastolic function is the filling function of the heart, and dysfunction is present in 25% of adults over 40 years and almost 100% over the age of 60 years, and is the primary cause of 50% of heart failure cases. That's why we are concerned about it. In diastolic dysfunction and failure, sometimes 50% of the patient may have a heart failure with normal systolic function. That is called as heart failure with preserved EF. So, but if we want to define LVDD, then impaired left ventricular filling at low pressure at abnormality in the diastolic distensibility filling or relaxation. Now, this diagram I want you to concentrate on what happens during the relaxation phase. LV relaxation suction is an energy requirement process, unlike the passive. So, ATP is needed for sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase to pump. So, when the action potential occurs, this calcium goes inside the cell, then inside the sarcolemma, and from there a lot of calcium is released, and rapid active myosin compound is activated, and myocardial contraction occurs. After that, they disengage, and the calcium is released back, and it has to be actively pushed into the sarcoplasmic reticulum so that it is ready for the next action potential. So this process is very important. It requires ATP. And when this ATP is not supplied because of several causes, mostly ischemia, then the ventricle doesn't relax and doesn't relax that fast. That's why the filling of the left ventricle is hampered. This is the crux of the matter. This is a very, very important thing. So, as I told you, there are two types of diastolic part. One is the active and passive. Active is due to muscle relaxation, and mostly it is seen in the affection is seen in the aortic stenosis and systemic hypertension when there is a left ventricular hypertrophy. And second is because of the muscle stiffness, and this is the chamber stiffness, this is the muscle stiffness. The muscle stiffness is because of the intrinsic problem into the muscle, that is called as cardiomyopathy due to amyloidosis and hemochromatosis, which is called as passive diastole. So there is a viscoelastic element also is affected. In that case, the LVDD can occur. So intrinsic cause, coronary disease continues to be a very important cause nowadays, and most of the patients which I see in the anesthesia do have underlying coronary disease. And extrinsic causes like the right ventricle distended, there is a restrictive pericarditis or tamponade, and relaxation is impaired also during myocardial ischemia if it occurs intraoperatively or in hypertrophic and congestive cardiomyopathy. What are the symptoms? Symptoms are, as the LA cannot empty itself into the left ventricle because it is responsible, the LA pressure rises. That's why the pulmonary venous pressure, pulmonary veins can't empty fully into the LA. So the zone 3 increases. Zone 3 pushes the zone 2 into the 2 and 2 1. So maximum major blood is coming to the left atrium, which is slightly hypoxic and hypercarbic, causes the some breathlessness to compensate for the hypoxia and hypercarbia. That is called as dyspnea, and it is graded by New York Heart Association. And I'll come to this E by A ratio later on. So we have a diastolic dysfunction where the impaired LV relaxation and increase LV stiffness. Either it can go to heart failure with preserved EF, or if it is not treated in time or during anesthesia and post-op period, it can go to systolic dysfunction causing the heart failure with a reduced ejection fraction. So what are this is how the patient presents. The patient, who are the patients who are vulnerable? People who have got sedentary lifestyle, hypertension, CAD, diabetes, obesity, atrial fibrillation. All these patients, they are more vulnerable to the diastolic dysfunction, and the patient will start having a dyspnea like this. So there are definite causes of left ventricular diastolic dysfunction, like the elderly people where due to aging, all these things they happen. Systemic long-standing hypertension, diabetes, ischemic heart disease, renal dysfunction, hypertensive cardiomyopathy, abnormal systolic function. If the patient has got low EF, it means he has got a diastolic dysfunction by default. Remember this. So if you have got low EF, then patient has got both the systolic and diastolic dysfunction. Pathological left ventricular hypertrophy as is present in the myocardial fibrosis and stiffness, and altered elastic fibrosis in amyloidosis, or outside is the pericardial constriction. So diagnosis, dyspnea exertion, very easy fatigability. These are the two important things. And if you add this to the risk factor, which I already just described, then we have got a feel that patient might be having a diastolic dysfunction. And then we confirm it by echocardiography, cardiac cath, and BNP. Echocardiography is the most practical, which I will describe now. What we see in echo? Echo, we see LV size, systolic LV function, LV wall thickness and mass index, LV left atrial volume index, whether there are the regional volume abnormalities, valvular heart disease, and cardiac arrhythmias. So these are the four things which we see into the echo: mitral inflow Doppler, tissue Doppler, propagation velocity, and pulmonary venous flow. Hello? I am audible? Hello? Is there disturbance is there? Hello? Hello?
तुम्ही audible आहे.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
छान audible आहे.
Okay. So mitral inflow is the pulse rate Doppler is performed in the apical 4-chamber view when they do a transthoracic echocardiography preoperatively to obtain the velocities. And this is how this is the technical things which are done. This is how we obtain the mitral inflow Doppler, and the beam is aligned parallel to the inflow. So this is nothing but a preload or volume which is going from left atrium to left ventricle. This is the echo probe. So this is the ventricle, left ventricle, and this is the atrium. So this is the mitral wall. So just at the closure line of mitral wall, they put the probe and see it, and then the pulse wave is sampling at tips of the mitral, and this is measured. And then we get such kind of a reading. We get an E wave, then a diastasis, that is nothing, is just some sort of a baseline, and then there is the A wave, E and A, like this. This is C. And if we have got diastolic in a normal person, the E wave is going to be naturally normal, and A is just a final formality of completing to empty the LA. So EA ratio is always more than 1. But as the left ventricle stiffens, the filling becomes less and less. So LA, now the atrium has to function more. So atrial contribution becomes slightly longer, bigger. So the ratio of E ratio becomes less than 1. In pseudo-normal, when the disease is quite advanced, where the atrial pressure is also high and ventricular pressure also, ventricles have become very stiff. in that case, even the atrium does is the best, it still cannot empty the cannot empty into the left ventricle. So it gives a feeling that the EA ratio looks normal, but it is not normal, which is then confirmed by other means, that is called as decelerating time. That's E waves deceleration velocity, and then that is measured. And in restrictive, the atrial contribution is 0, and almost it's the only early filling phase. E wave is more than 1.5. So these are the very, very important things in echo. Now this is the mitral inflow. This is the Doppler, and this is Doppler. What we see, same thing is there. This is normal. The impaired relaxation, A contribution more. Here pseudo normalization, and here is a more of E. Same shown in the echocardiography OS, and here the probe. This is the Doppler probe. Now what happens? This is the volume. So this is the preload, which is seen. This is the preload. And the another thing is, it's called as mitral annular velocity, that is the tissue Doppler. So what they do is they put a tissue Doppler onto the muscle of the left ventricle. So this is the lateral wall and this is the septum. So when the muscle ventricle contracts, it comes when ventricle relaxes, the length increases from here to here. From base, this is called as the base of the heart. This is apex. So the ventricle relaxes. So septum also relaxes. So this is called as the how relaxing this is. So naturally it is a negative wave. So this is called as the E prime. E prime. This is the E wave. This is called E prime. So it's a small e with a apostrophe S. So this is the E, lateral E, and this is septal E. So this is usually same size as the E wave. Sometimes, as the left ventricle is taking a long time for relaxation, the diastasis becomes an important aspect of LV filling. There, the L wave sometimes appears. So these are our cardiologists who look after all these things, which are not for concern. Just for your knowledge, I'm just telling you. So E wave velocity is reflect the pressure gradient into the early diastole and affected by the preload and alteration in the LV relaxation. Where the A is the late diastole, where A velocity reflect the filling gradient between the late diastole naturally, and the E wave diastole time is influenced by the LV relaxation. So more time is required for the E to come down to normal. And these are the tissue Doppler, which is a technical aspects of it, how the Doppler is placed and how the velocity is and everything is that. Because the readings are very important, we don't set all these things. In that case, we don't get proper reading. And this is normal E wave, and this is a small E wave due to the reduced relaxation or slow relaxation of the, because you can see the speed 14 centimeter per second, here 8 centimeter per second. So this is a chronic hypertension in a with LVH in a 58-year-old man. So in patient with cardiac disease, E prime can be used to correct for the effect of the LV relaxation on mitral E velocity, and E by E prime ratio can be applied for the prediction of the LV filling pressures. There are certain since it requires a intact annulus and a good muscle. So where wall replacement is done or calcification is done or constitutive pericarditis is there, it is not applicable. In those cases, sometimes then we have to take help of the other modalities, like this pulmonary venous inflow. So what happens during atrial diastole, the blood is coming toward the pulmonary venous blood is coming toward the atrium, and when the atrium contracts, small amount of reflux occurs into the pulmonary veins. But when the ventricles are non-compliant and the atrium cannot empty itself, then the blood, instead of going into the ventricle, get regurgitation. That is called as atrial reversal flow. So this is also one of the sign of severe LV dysfunction. Then color flow a mode of propagation is done, and it is done by using the color flow and with color Doppler. So these are the common things. The EA ratio is in normal patient is less more than 0.8, but as it is between 0.8 to 1.2 in the, up to grade 2, and more than 2 in the, so whatever diagram I have shown, same thing is in the tabular form. E by E prime ratio less than 10 in normal persons and more than 14 is an abnormality. So we have to see into what are the things we have to see into the echo. This is the EA, 1 is to 1.5, EA less than 1, 0.8, 1.5, 2 and 2. These are tissue doctor, and these are the they also do a Valsalva to check whether it's a reversible restricted, whether drug therapy can work, or it's a fixed restricted. If it is a fixed restricted, it's a very, very high risk patient. Patient can have a severe cardiovascular, which is called a major adverse cardiovascular episode during anesthesia. These are the limitations: mitral and cannulation, calcification, then presence of mechanical device, mitral stenosis of any etiology. Because LA, when LA pressure increases, there could be some other etiology. So we have to take into consideration bundle branch block, pace rhythm, or atrial fibrillation. So what are the practical approach to the grade diastolic dysfunction from the E prime? And if the septal E prime is more than 8, lateral is more than 10, LA volume is less than 34 ml per square meter. There is a normal function. I mean, it is more than that. LA volume is more than 34 ml per square meter, and E by A more than 2. There is a severe diastolic dysfunction. Now, recent guidelines they tell us that we do the echo, and from echo we can get the EA ratio. And if the EA ratio is less than 0.8 and E velocity is less than 50 centimeter per second, there's a normal LA pressure. So grade 1 diastolic dysfunction, we can go ahead. And if there are two factors out of these three, what are the three factors? Average E by E prime more than 14, the tricuspid pressure velocity of more than 2.8 meter per second, left ventricular volume, left atrium volume index more than 34 ml per square meter. These are three things. If out of which any two, when two criteria are available, two negative, then this is normal. It's a one positive, one negative, then we can't say this way or that way. Then we have to do other studies. And if there are two positive, then it's a LV diastolic grade 2. And if more than E by 2, EA more than 2, straight away it is a grade 3 diastolic dysfunction. So the same thing here. So we have to look into the echo about this thing, whether the patient has got pulmonary hypertension in the form of TR velocity more than 2.8, whether the LA is enlarged, LA volume wise enlarged 34 ml per square meter. If these two things are present, you take it for it's a red flag for you in that case. What is the treatment of the severe diastolic dysfunction? ACE inhibitors, ARBs, they remodel the heart and help in relaxing the left ventricle. Beta blockers, they control the rate. That's why the diastolic time becomes adequate for the proper filling of the left ventricle. And calcium channel blockers also, they reduce the LV, and diuretics, they reduce the preload and help the patient. Pre-anesthesia assessment, careful history. Most important is chronic fatigue syndrome is there. Chronic fatigue syndrome is very easily overlooked. So concentrate on that. And NYHA grading. If NYHA grading is there, means the patient has got grade 2 to grade 3 without any valvular heart disease as seen on the echo, then patient must be having a severe diastolic dysfunction. Then inability to perform activity less than 4 minutes, that is the climbing a flight of stairs, is also gives the idea. Elderly person by default also always have underlying diastolic dysfunction. If there is a presence of edema, JVP, and signs of congestive heart failure recently with comorbidity like long-standing hypertension, diabetes, aortic stenosis, coronary disease, previous MI, so arrhythmias, then atrial fibrillation, and female patient, and with increased BMI and obesity, these are all risk factors for developing a diastolic dysfunction patient going into diastolic failure or congestive or a heart failure. So what anesthesia we do? Anesthesia is basically, just remember the principle of giving anesthesia to the stenotic lesion. What we do is we prevent the myocardial depression. So induction agent which are less depressive to the myocardium are etomidate, fentanyl, muscle relaxant, inhalation agents, like all standard muscle relaxants which are nowadays available at very lucky, which all are available. Sevoflurane, isoflurane, desflurane, narcotics are very safe agents. Then we have to preserve the cardiac output. So what we do is we have to maintain three things: preload, contractile, and afterload. Preload, you have to have some kind of a monitoring lines to maintain the filling of the heart. Then contractility, sometimes you may have to start some kind of support, and of course maintain the normal sinus rhythm, so that the atrial kick, which may contribute to more than 25%, 30%, sometimes 40% in this diastolic dysfunction, is maintained by the normal sinus rhythm. So all attempts are to be made. However, in atrial fibrillation, chronic atrial fibrillation not possible. However, we can reduce the rate and allow the time. Avoid myocardial ischemia. So whatever the demand supply, everybody knows about it. They are to be seen. Most importantly, extremes of hypertensive episode or a hypotensive episode are to be avoided and treat the tachycardia. Sympathetic tone should be maintained. But sometimes what happens, in order to give too much ideal anesthesia, we end up in producing hypotension. So we had to have some kind of a drug which will increase the blood pressure and maintain the coronary blood flow, so that during diastole the calcium can be again sequestrated back to sarcolemma, which is the etiology of the LV relaxation. So this is so ephedrine and phenylephrine are to be used. Now this is the very important slide. Intraoperative blood pressure management. Intraoperative BP control is important. The systolic blood pressure must be within 10 to 20% of the baseline, which is very easy to say for a speaker than the to be practiced when we actually on the scene. Pulse pressure should be kept below diastolic blood pressure. This is a very, very important thing. Now, what is the what is the importance of pulse pressure? No, we know there are 4 types of pressure: systolic pressure, and diastolic pressure, a mean pressure, which is the mean perfusion pressure, and fourth is the difference between systolic and diastolic. That's called a pulse pressure. So, any increase in the pulse pressure increases the ventricular wall stress, alters the ventricular contraction time, and impairs the early diastolic filling, increasing the cardiac load. So remember the rule of 70. If the patient is over the age of 70, always try to maintain the diastolic pressure above 70, heart rate about 70, and pulse pressure below 70, because the pulse pressure should be always kept below the diastolic pressure. Then to achieve this, we may use a combination of individually or combination of these drugs, which are weaker drugs, NTG, phenylephrine, and sometimes in a cardiac patient we use levosimendan, because we know that intraoperatively many times if these things are not followed, then the patient gives us a lot of trouble in coming off bypass. Postoperative dysfunction is there. Patient remains on the ventilator for a very long time. So we had to anticipate all these things and consider the intraoperative insult inflicted onto the heart during cardiac surgery. Avoid perioperatively. We have to avoid all the factors which will stimulate the sympathetic nervous system in form of shivering, anemia, hypoxia, electrical imbalance, myocardial ischemia, hypovolemia, tachycardia, rhythm, arrhythmia, postoperative sympathetic stimulation for during intubation, extubation, and hypertensive crisis by whatever means. So we had to go for adequate pain relief, avoidance of hypoxia, hypercarbia. GA with epidural anesthesia in a very high risk patient helps in giving a good pain relief and reducing total depressive doses of the anesthetic agents, and further the epidural can take care of the postoperative analgesia. Intraoperative monitoring is whatever is available with you, CVP, if possible, Swan-Ganz and TE, but they are not available everywhere, but CVP is easily available. So we have to anticipate this patient, what are the risky patients, and accordingly we have to get ready with the monitoring part. Postoperatively, supplementary oxygen, fluid balance, good postoperative care, treat anemia, hypoxia, and so many things. And most importantly, start these drugs, anti-renal blocker and ACE inhibitor. Generally, we don't give ACE inhibitor on the day of surgery, but postoperatively we have to restart it so that the diastolic dysfunction we can manage better. So when you see the echo next time, this is the first slide I have shown you. We have to see apart from the ejection fraction. So if somebody's ejection fraction less than 40%, take it for granted the patient has got combined systolic and diastolic dysfunction. If the patient's ejection fraction is good, more than 60%, in that case, we have to look into the other parameter, that is the left atrium. Because we know that if the left atrium is enlarged, this is the milliliter per square meter, and this is the size of the LA. So we have to tell the cardiologist to give us the volume index. They generally don't do it because they have to do hurriedly, but ideally they have to give us the volume index of the on the echocardiography. Alternatively, if the left atrium is unduly enlarged, in that case, we have to take into consideration that patient has got some kind of a volume overload into the left atrium. It means the left ventricle is not doing well. Then tricuspid TR, tricuspid regurgitation velocity, if it is more than 2.8, it means the back pressure is coming from. So LV is not good. So LA is increasing size back into the pulmonary veins, pulmonary artery, right ventricle, and causing the tricuspid regurgitation. So tricuspid regurgitation there, that is a mild pulmonary artery hypertension. Take it for granted. In absence of any COPD, in absence of any lung problem, take it for primary pulmonary hypertension, take it for granted it is because of the left ventricular diastole dysfunction. And E by E prime on echo more than 14, and E by EA ratio more than 1.5. These are all red flags for you. So I conclude, LV diastole dysfunction is an underestimated and unanticipated cardiac dysfunction. Many routine surgery patient coming from routine surgery may be suffering from LV diastole dysfunction, and a careful history and high degree of suspicion is very, very important. Getting a history of dyspnea exertion, chronic fatigue syndrome. These are the patients who are to be investigated accordingly. Obesity, long-standing hypertension, all these comorbidities are to be taken seriously in female patients, elderly. Normal EF does not rule out left ventricular diastole dysfunction. Optimize the factor in the preoperative period so that we have got smooth sailing intraoperatively and postoperatively, and obtain the help of the intensivist and the cardiologist if you require intraoperative. Thank you very much.